You're listening to Parent MD, the podcast where top pediatric experts do the homework for you, sharing clear and trustworthy medical advice so parents feel empowered to take the very best care of their kids. Welcome to Parent MD today, and we're excited to have our guest, Dr. Mick Connors, with us.
Thanks for having me, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, such a treat. I've been looking forward to getting this one together and on the books for a long time. To give a little bit of background for the group, I want to highlight that you came in yesterday to help us kick off our Parent MD Business Advisory Council. And it was a great group. For the group to know, we have five industry leaders in various industries we brought together with business acumen, some clinical background, and obviously passion as parents to come and help us impact lives, but from a business rigor standpoint. So with that meeting yesterday, you're the only doctor on the council. I invited you. My two other partners invited other C-suite leaders. So great to have your perspective. And I wanted the audience to hear a little bit more from me about our connectivity before you give your background. But Mick and I go way back. And we go back to our days of leadership in the AP for Kentucky and Tennessee, and our paths crossed again a few years ago as Mick has been heavily involved in the pediatric IT space and to bring solutions to parents and doctors in a way that was desperately needed. So we have a lot of the similar passions and interest and very entrepreneurial minded and enjoy our conversation. So to have you with us today is big because there's a lot of conversations we have. I think we'll have a hard time keeping our time because there's a lot of things that we want to talk about, but a lot of things I think we want parents to know and hear. And as you jump in, I'll give the other piece that I want parents to know. You're a pediatric ER doctor, so you have a definitely unique perspective. And we'll look to jump into all those areas. Won't you kick it off, Mick, by giving us a little bit about your background, and then we'll delve into some conversations really around healthcare delivery. And then we're going to migrate that to some discussions around Parent MD and what we think parents should know, and maybe some things that you think all parents need to know about the ER and that ER doctors want parents to know. So does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great, Josh. I really appreciate the invitation.
Give us a little background.
Yeah, so I guess it starts with I'm one of 8 kids. My mom had 8 kids in 10 years, so I think I was destined to be a pediatrician.
And you were number 7?
I was 7 of 8, yeah. My brother passed away of pediatric cancer before I was born, so I grew up with her stories. So I think it's interesting because I think, now I'm a parent. Certainly I've been a child, right? I've been in a family. I've been a parent and then a pediatrician and then a pediatric ER physician. And I think my background and my inspiration to be a physician has always been focused on the parent side and the patient side. So I think it's that perspective that is greatly excites me about Parent MD, the work that you're doing, and happy to be on the Business Advisory Council because you also recognize that, no margin, no mission, no mission, no margin, right? Yep. So that's what I've learned over my 30-year careers. We need to make pediatrics better. We need to make it sustainable, and you have to cover both sides. You can't just have mission and without a way to, make money to make it sustainable, and you can't make it sustainable without a mission. So I think those are key pieces to the puzzle that you and I have been trying to put together for our 25 or 30 years of knowing each other.
Definitely. And that's what excites me most about our conversations because we both get that perspective, but we also are have been active working with business partners, with systems, with payers to pull all those stakeholders together to have conversations, to get to solutions so we can have sustainability in our field and great quality, great access for parents, but know that we have to keep evolving and doing it differently than it was done 20, 30 years ago. And the landscape just seems to be more rapidly evolving the last 5 to 10 years, don't you think?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think it's why it's important that I try to create and you try to create a physician voice around this, because if you've never seen a patient, laid hands on a patient, you really have a difficult time solving the problems, right? So a lot of people with great intent, with a lot of great expertise in technology and business, bring that expertise. But if you don't combine that with some kind of clinical expertise or some kind of clinical experience, it's where things get askew. And I think that's what we've seen over the last 5, 10 years is there's a lot of well-intentioned people thinking that they're fixing the problems when in reality, they're fixing some, but maybe creating two more.
Right. So let's go with that. You had a vision to create a company to come in and solve a piece of this, and that solution's still in place and growing and thriving. Talk to me about why you were the CEO and founder of Anytime Pediatrics, and what problem that was working to solve, and how you think it has a play in the future. And we'll talk about how we've partnered with them in Parent MD as well.
Yeah, no, I think it all stems back to kind of the bigger picture as well. I guess my passion around pediatrics is always how do I get care better for patients and parents and families. And, so when I returned to the ER, one of the ironic things, I was a pediatric emergency medicine physician for for about 10 years, and then developed something called pediatric sedation, where we help kids get care outside of the operating room for minor procedures and lie still for MRIs. And then I came back to the ER in 2015, and it was really striking because when I left the ER, we were on paper,
Mm.
and when I came back, we had electronic medical records.
Right.
And the most interesting thing about the electronic medical records is that I could see how many times that patient had been in the emergency department. And so I was early on in getting back into the emergency department. And, the other side of the emergency department is just that perspective of how many people are there that don't need to be there. Really don't want to be there, but that's really their only place. And I tell this story a lot because I think it's just so profound as a person who often thinks about things differently and sees things differently in the emergency department. So I saw this little boy who was 2 years old, had no chronic conditions, had been seen in the ER 26 times. And so you're like, oh my gosh, mom, what are you doing? Like, okay, I'm not like a cynical, cranky old doc, right? I'm fresh back in the ER. So
Yeah.
I walk in and say, hey, mom, looks like Joey's been here a lot. I think, how can I help you get connected to a pediatrician?
Yep.
And I'll never forget her because she looked me right in the eye like she knew I was coming and said, Doc, you just don't get it. I work a minimum wage job. I work, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. If I don't go to work, I don't get paid. If I don't go to work, I might get fired. And I'm assigned to a community health center that's available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
And I can't leave work to go
So
there.
I'm like, okay, what can I do? How can I help you? Right. So it's just that sometimes we get lost in our own perspective and our own silo.
Right.
But for me, that really struck me, that in addition to so many kids going to urgent cares and retail clinics and, the new telemedicine in 2016 that was coming, that was just more fragmented care of kids going wherever was convenient or accessible and just getting lesser care. So I just didn't understand why we couldn't use technology to connect patients and parents to their physicians and to influence physicians to go back to taking those calls after hours and guiding parents and, or calling a nurse. So that's where Anytime Pediatrics really came from. I tell folks I was the least tech savvy person ever to start a tech company. I really knew very little about technology, but I knew the workflow and the process that I wanted to implement, and it was really based around how do we strengthen those relationships,
And
which
and it was really about empowering the medical home, empowering our colleagues who are pediatricians in the medical home to be better connected, increasing access to the patients. This wasn't to take away from the medical home, and it still isn't. It is to really build up and empower and support the medical home
yeah.
so they can have that continuity. Yet when they don't have maybe the resources or bandwidth, Anytime is also an extension, a way to be an extension of the medical home in partnership with the medical home to provide support when so many pediatric offices are constrained by resources, by time, geography, time of day to meet the needs of patients when we all know parents need support 24/7. Oh, and they're looking for more now, and they recognize a lot of care can be rendered via telehealth and not always in person because it is inconvenient and isn't always required. And I think our colleagues are coming along seeing the value of telehealth, and it has a place. And then I'll reference one more thing. You sent an article to our team yesterday noting that a group that was surveyed, 98% of families go to the internet for clinical support in some form or fashion: telehealth, community, or education, which are the three things Parent MD is all about. So, how do you feel that Anytime Pediatrics and the work that you started is having an impact to the positive for pediatricians and patients?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really the focus on the patients and really trying to get the parents and the patients to understand how important the relationship is with their primary care provider, and the reverse is true as well. Primary care providers, really, their secret sauce, their special gift is that relationship with the patient. So as we move, and what I've seen is the evolution over the last 20, maybe even 10 years, we'll say, more retail clinics, more urgent cares, more after hours, more emergency department visits for non-emergent conditions is really families just going somewhere as opposed to feeling like they can call their pediatrician
Yeah.
or they can call the nurse line or they can try to find and how to navigate, care. And like, it's scary to me that 98% of parents go online and go to Dr. Google and we'll go to new technology that you hear about now called Chat GPT to try to find answers, in the stratosphere, right? In the
Right.
cloud, as opposed to, man, if I had that relationship with Dr. Honaker and I could reach out to his office and I knew it was information I could trust,
Right.
then I would feel more comfortable with what I need to do and when I need to do it. And so I think that's where I see the exciting part around Anytime Pediatrics. We'll skip over COVID, but where it's now is we're really giving the medical homes that ability through technology to add a nurse line, nurse triage, reduce ER visits, get parents the reassurance that they need. I'm a pediatric ER doc. 90% of what I do is reassurance.
Yeah.
The best thing I can do for a family is say, nope, Joey's okay. You can go to sleep.
We don't have
We can go to
meningitis.
sleep, right?
We
And
don't have
and and I,
cancer.
and I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, I think that's I don't need to run a bunch of tests and do a bunch of things if I could just see a child through my training and experience and say, no, he's really okay. This is what you need to do.
Well, it goes back to me, a lesson that learned back in medical school, and I'll never forget clinical diagnosis class we had in the first couple years. And one statistic that just jumped out to me then, I think it was just as important then now as it was then. That was 80% of the time you can make a diagnosis by history alone. If you can see and or touch the patient, that 80% goes up to 90%. And then 10% of the time, you might need some lab tests and some other interventions and imaging and such. But overall, the role and value and tool, telehealth, it is a great adjunct when it crosses geographic barriers. It helps people with time. It's efficient and it can be just as effective. And then with your all's team, with the nurses support that we have with Parent MD and you have for so many other offices, we both know that nurses can take care of so many needs that parents have in the triage, identifying, and often diagnosing, managing a problem. And the physician needs to be there, honestly, at the top of their license so they can help a bigger population, run teams, oversee groups, and be there for things that only the doctor can do. I do think that's a transition we're going to have to see in our system and for our doctor groups is that physicians continue to function at the higher level. And hence, I think the growing nurse practitioner teams, growing navigators, educators, it takes a village. It takes a village in a medical home, if it ever does anywhere, to take care of a child. And it can't all be on the doctor. Just like in the old days, the doctor went to the delivery, the doctor went to the ICU, the doctor went into the hospital. Well, we started realizing that as certain doctors and other groups had areas of specialty and focus, that allowed the doctor to come into the medical home and really focus on that because that's pretty overwhelming itself. Now we recognize it needs a bigger team. I think resources such as Anytime Pediatrics and Parent MD will be needed, trusted pediatric partners. Now, the other thing I would highlight is the thing parents have a whole lot of things that they can go to on the internet. And another bit of our passion is that this is pediatrician led. Now, one of our taglines, as you know, is pediatrician led, parent guided, because we want and need parents guided. We were just having a conversation before this as Alex is supporting us, and Alex is our chief marketing officer, but a mother of one, an expectant mother of another. And what she thinks is all that matters. I mean, we were talking before, and Alex shared with us a little bit of feedback, and we'll just, because I love to be real and live on this conversation, says, hey, we probably don't need to spend so much on history of the doc because the moms, they need to know enough, but they want to hear the richness of your conversation. I'm like, well, great, because all that matters is what you think, Alex. So I cannot emphasize enough that you and I, in our brand and what we do in our clinical practice and now with what we're doing, really all that matters is what the parent thinks. We're just here to support, but we feel like we can be that trusted resource because we are pediatricians. and we're parents, and we want to come alongside. And I think that's what differentiates our virtual health partnerships compared to so many other things out there. It's
Right.
pediatrician led, and hence the trust. And then we're going to help you. So let's migrate the conversation a little bit. So we laid the foundation that folks know our backgrounds, how we came together, why I see, respect, and so appreciate your opinion and input. And I think you impact healthcare in such a big level across the country as you're in Nashville and working with Anytime Pediatrics and other entities. Talk a little bit about how your career has progressed as you think it will impact healthcare more. So you've been in the ER state, you helped set up the sedation service, you had Anytime Pediatrics, and over the last few years, you have been having more broad conversations with groups around how to capitalize healthcare ventures that come in and partner with pediatrics on a bigger level. We're so used to our mom and pop shops, but the world of pediatrics is transforming around the country. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to come and talk a little bit about things we want parents to know clinically from the ER and where we're going and how we're going to bring you to the studio and also talk about some courses that I think are relevant from an emergency standpoint. But
Sure.
come back and talk about how you see pediatrics transforming and some of the conversations you're having with people, and back to it's the business side. Some of that's about capitalization, how the whole world is transforming, and how what do parents need to know?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, I think as we talk to more parents, truly what do parents want? And when you look at the surveys of parents, it's interesting. They want trust, they want relationships, they want information from their trusted physician, their trusted sources. And yet, most of the innovation that you see or disruption that you see in healthcare is trying to convince them that they're consumers, that convenience is all that really matters, seeing doing something quickly is, being accessible to a random, right? It's such a interesting time right now where I think if we listen to the patients and we listen to the parents, that would lead us down one path, which is the path I think you and I know over 30 years is the path that we really need to focus on versus the disruptors that feel like we can go to the local pharmacy and we can get the same level of care, and we can go to the random doc on the internet and we can get the same level, or we can just search the internet and find it, right? And it's interesting because I'm hoping parents will lean into what they want and be more forceful. I'm hoping physicians and pediatricians like you and I can lean in and be a little more forceful that, it's the blocking and tackling of healthcare is relationships and trust. And the more we try to convince consumers and innovate around convenience and other things, I think we're going down the wrong path. So my real interest in going forward is how do we bring back relationships and trust, and how do we get back to what patients need, and not necessarily always what they want, but what they need. And so, around value. So there's a lot of talk now about value-based care and those kind of things. And for the families in the audience, it's really not it's really what I would like to think about is how do we get patients what they need in the way that they need it, not necessarily in the way that we want to provide it. Like, I don't understand why a parent has to come to the office to do a screening test for this, right? Why can't I send you digitally? Why can't I reach out to you after a visit and say, hey, how are you doing? Via phone call, via video, via chat, via text. There's just so many different ways. And I think as we've moved down to the physicians being more productive and fee for service and aligning that wheel, then we move away from, hey, what's best for the patient? Is it really best to bring them in? Maybe it's best for them to be at home. I could do a video visit at home. Pediatrics, especially, like in our Anytime Pediatrics, bringing in nurses, a nurse being able to visualize a patient. You and I in the office, I mean, I can diagnose most kids without a stethoscope, without, just from across the room, if
Sure,
I could see them,
sure.
right? If I just had a telephone, maybe I could do a lot, and I've done a lot in the past, but if you give me a picture of that kid or I have visualization of the kid, I can see how they're breathing, how they're feeling. I can do so much more. But why should I bring them into the office just so I can build that? Right. So patients don't want that. Families don't want that. They certainly also understand, hey, if the doc says I need to come in, I need to come in. Right. But I should trust that doc that the reason that he or she is telling me to come in
Because I
is
need to
because I
come in.
need to come in, not because they need to submit a bill.
Let's
Right.
let's talk about that for a second because trust is one of our main values at Parent MD, and you went right where I knew you would go because of our relationship conversations. It always comes back to relationships and trust. Okay. Now, expertise is inferred and is in there, part of the trust and the relationship because you believe in the expertise. But I think you hit on something that I want to put a little bit of a light on our profession and our colleagues. This may be uncomfortable for some pediatricians listening, but I think parents need to know is what you're highlighting. This is about we're serving parents. So, and I want us to be trusted. So I think we need to be honest about some in our world. To me, you need to identify that medical home where you do have trust and relationship with that pediatrician. And I do think you just highlighted one of those litmus tests is why is the doctor bringing you in? Are they serving and meeting your needs, or is it to run a business? We're both business people, and we just highlighted. The good thing about us, I think we have the mindset that the money and the margin comes when you meet the mission. It just happens to in healthcare. When you do a great job and you have relationships, the money comes. You just need to be a good fiscal steward and keep working and provide access, service, quality, and cost, and be a good fiscal steward. But at the end of the day, I'll highlight a couple examples that when I've talked to med students and residents, I've tried to teach them through the years. When you have an office, you are there for the patients. The employees are there not to just have a job, we're there to serve the patients. So then access and service becomes very important. So, in other words, I don't think it's good when we say, all right, these times a day, we will only see these types of visits. And I'm going to be rigid on this time slot. And we get to X amount of time, we're done. To me, schedules are all just a placeholder to plan our time accordingly and try to get synced to come in. So you have to manage that. We have to respect their time. It's not just about respecting our time. So the whole late concept, man, we got to respect each other. Me not being too prescriptive, like, oh, at 4 o'clock, I will only see these. No, if the patient needs that. One discussion I remember had early in my practice, and I was so thankful that my partner's on the same page, but in the after hours world, it was not traditional to do checkups. But just as you said, what are families doing during the day? They're working.
Mhm.
So for them to carve out time for checkups, I saw real quickly parents also needed the evening hours to do checkups. So to me, real quickly, you look at the practice and see what needs you have, and are they meeting those and they feel like they're running a business, or are they there to serve you? You got to run a business, but it's got to be palpable that they're providing access service and they're caring more what you think than what they think. And I think that's hard. And I think a lot of busy practices and clinicians, before you know it, you kind of forget what the purpose of the practice is and it becomes just a machine. And so that's something I just like to look to our colleagues to make sure they're doing those self checks, but give advice to parents of how they pick their pediatrician. Telehealth can be a partner. Now, talk to me about this. Can a and this was something I challenged myself early when I thought about Parent MD because if relationships are important, there's no way I'm going to be able to have a personal relationship with everybody in the United States that may use Parent MD. So I just need to call that. There's no way I can. There's no way any time pediatrics can have a personal relationship with every parent the same way. What I think they can have a relationship with is the brand and the people that we put and work with us on the brand so that when they need to be extensions of the medical home and your doctor's not available, they're going to be a trusted partner that you might not even know them personally, but you're going to feel like they care about you all the same because we got the right people at the table and on the team. Talk to me about that since we can't provide we cannot provide the same level of relationship as the doctor that knows you from birth all the way to college. I'll never act like we can. But how can we, and what are our challenges, and how do we rise to make it feel maybe similar because that relationship, but they can trust the brand? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it all starts with that central relationship, and how do you use that central relationship to make sure that you're guided to the proper sources that they know and trust, right? So if you can't see your pediatrician, you want to see someone your pediatrician trusts. You want to see an ER that your pediatrician trusts, right? You want to talk to a nurse that your pediatrician
Yep.
trusts, right? So it's all connected. It's figuring out how to connect it. You know, in our days, it was called the continuum of care, right?
Hmm.
So mom is the first, typically, you know, maybe a few dads I see, but mom's that first line of defense for their child, right? And they get to a certain level And then, man, maybe it's a phone call that they need, and the phone call can help reassure them. And maybe they could talk to a nurse. Maybe they can, go to Parent MD, find some information. Maybe they need a telehealth visit. Maybe they need an in-office visit. Maybe they need an urgent care visit. So it all kind of plays in. Right now, I think parents have so many options, they don't know where to go, right? So, in the old days, there was one linear path, and now it's like I can go on the internet, I can go to the retail clinic, I can go to the urgent care. I mean, I see families that have been to all places in one night, right? They go to the retail clinic, like, yeah, that person really didn't know what
That
they were
didn't feel
doing.
good.
That didn't feel good. I went to this urgent care, gosh, that really felt good. So now I'm in the ER, and I'm in a children's ER, and I'm seeing a pediatric ER physician, and that, my job, to your point, is I'm not your pediatrician, but I need to establish that trust
Real quickly.
real quickly that, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm listening to you. I understand your
And I
concerns.
care about your kid
And
all the
let's
same, even though we don't know each other.
right, but let's make a game plan here. What are your concerns? What are my concerns? And how do we move forward with that? Because it's all, we've gone away from the whole idea that it's a partnership, right? So, the parents feel one way, like to your point, and the pediatricians feel one way, and how do we get that together, right?
Yep.
The middle ground is there. Like pediatricians can't be open 24/7. They can't take calls all night long, every night long. So how do we create that continuum of care that we can meet the parents' needs and the patient's needs, but we can also not burn out our physicians and our practices and those things as well. And there's so many ways, if you connect the dots, that we can do a better job than what we're doing with all this fragmented. I go here, I go there, I get a fax, I get this, right? It's like, man, if we just put a little effort in that front end, things would flow a lot better and be better for everybody.
I think we just dipped our toe in the water of this conversation, and I want us to come back later and talk about healthcare and delivery more, how it is fragmented and broken, how it needs to be better, how it can be, and talk about solutions more. Here as we wrap up, I'd like to ask just a question or two for you from a parent perspective, or not a parent perspective, but from parents' interest, I think, from a PEDS ER doctor perspective. What do you want all parents to know as they think about the ER as a resource, when and how to utilize, and how you think it ought to function from a partnership and extension of the medical home, which I know you're passionate about. So, what do you want parents to know?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is what I try to convey to parents is that this is a partnership, right? Parents, every parent is different. Every parent's reaction to their child's illness is different. I'll give you a quick, if we've got time, I'll give you a quick. I
Sure.
was I was running around one day in the ER, right, and I've got one kiddo who's got a minor fracture of his arm. He's got a broken arm, right? Doesn't need to be set. I look at the X-ray. Yeah, it's broken, but put a splint on it. He's out the door, right?
Yep.
Okay, I can check that one off. Got another kid with very complicated history of fever and a big liver, and he's not doing well, and he doesn't feel well, and I get the blood work back, and I think, gosh, it might be leukemia, it could be cancer. So, I'm like, okay, I'm going to run in the broken arm room, and then and then I'll be able to take a little more time with
Right.
this mom and this complex kid. So I walk in the room with the broken arm, and I said, well, here's his X-rays. That was the days we had
Yeah.
X-rays, and I said, it's broken. She's like, it's broken. She went absolutely crazy. She went absolutely, like, I can't believe it's broken. I got to call my husband. I mean, she just went bonkers.
Right.
I'm like trying to calm her down. Like it was such a good learning experience for me because, this is a nothing ball,
Yeah.
right? From the doc perspective, hey, this, I'm telling you, mom, and take another X-ray in 6 months, you'll never know it's broken. Like there's no long-term
He'll be
impact.
good.
There's nothing. It's
Yeah.
all fine. I spent all this time, and then I walk in the other room. I'm like, oh man, I'm exhausted, and I need to talk to this mom. And so I sat her down and I said, hey, mom, it looks like, this lab is this and this lab is this. And she's like, well, what are you telling me? And I said, well, I'm a little worried this might be, cancer.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, what do we need to do next? What do you recommend? And I was absolutely floored. Like it was like, oh my gosh, it's just such a perfect example that medicine is just not a recipe. It's
No.
not baking
It's an
bread.
art.
It's an art, and every parent, every interaction is different, right? So, the common question is always, well, should they be in the ER or shouldn't they be in there? Oh, Johnny's just got a snuffly nose. Like, why the heck is Johnny in the ER? That kid that I saw 26 times been in the ER, right? And it's interesting because my take on it is, moms are a great judge, and they know their limitations, and when they're freaking out, they should do something. Ideally, it would be great if they could access their pediatrician. They could call an after-hours nurse line. If they felt like, "Hey, this is more chronic," I could look at Parent MD, or I could,
Sure.
search the web or do those kind of things. But if it's a, "Gosh, I'm not gonna sleep if I can't get some advice," the nurses can, on any time right now, 95% of the calls from worried parents are handled by the nurse.
Right.
It's about 5% of the time they say, "Gosh, you need to go get seen," or "Let me get a doc on video," or things like that. So most of the time you don't have to leave the house. You don't have to go to the retail
Which
clinic.
really does
You
2
don't have to go to
things.
the
It
urgent care.
provides, an answer an answer after the assessment with the triage, but it gives peace of mind.
Right.
And then lastly, obviously, it's about utilization of resources, and I love that you highlighted that it's really about, okay, we trust the moms to make the decisions best for their child. How many times did we think it was nothing, but the mother said, "No, there's something," and then that's where we all learn through the years. Like, okay, I'm gonna listen to the mom, and as they feel they need to go to the ER, yes, but then obviously it's on us to make sure they understand options and provide options and resources. And yeah, I think whether it's the nurse from the doctor's office or a supported triage service or Anytime or Parent MD working with Anytime, nurses can provide such a value, which we really want to highlight and sing their praises of how much they can impact and deliver a lot of care and provide so much reassurance to parents. And want parents to here's my thing. Parents need to have a medical home and or partners with the medical home that they have access to.
Yeah.
And to me, that's probably where I'm gonna wrap up the conversation is trust, service, quality, all those things are important, but it doesn't matter if you don't have access. Your whole world really was about providing another access point for parents and doctors to help with the machine. My vision for Parent MD is that we are providing access virtually to supplement the medical home as needed or requested by the doctor or the parent, but just be an access point. But to do that, we've got to be able to listen and have a way you can come in and give us your need. And then we got to be there quickly to get with you. And then we got to help you kind of provide a plan. So to me, access of healthcare is the problem. We've got a lot of great technical solutions out there. We've got a lot of people who are, as you said, well intended and desiring to fix problems. We have to do it fiscally sound way, but providing access is the biggest thing that parents want. And then when they get access, I think they want compassion. They want someone to listen and will take care of their children as if it were their child. And to me, that's the litmus test for everybody I partner with is, all right, are you going to do pediatrics as you would with your own children?
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I really try to take from an emergency medicine perspective. I think if we get down the burnout path, cynical path, we say, "Oh, this patient shouldn't be here, that patient shouldn't be there," and families will often feel bad, like, "Oh, really, he doesn't need
Sure,
anything,
we
he's
don't need
doing
to add
fine."
guilt to
Like
them.
they're like feeling guilty, and I'm like, "No, you don't understand. If you're concerned, I'm happy to see your
Yeah.
child." I see plenty of parents that aren't concerned about their kids.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I worry
And
about.
they need to be. Yeah.
I don't worry about these patients that are in the ER that mom's worried about, dad's worried about, that they can't sleep, they don't not sure, and they want that reassurance, or they want me, and it works the other way. Oftentimes parents will come in and say, "I think this is nothing," and then I'll say, "No, this is something, and we need to do X, Y, Z," and they're like, they go the other way, like, "Oh, I didn't want all that." Right. And so it's really creating that trust, that partnership, that relationship. I think for the most part, the emergency department gets a bad rap because people are there because they care for kids. Nobody's there to, work all night, work holidays, work weekends because this is like a cool job. I mean, it's stressful, it's hard, it's challenging. But the joy comes when we create that bond
Yeah.
between the parent and the patient. I tell my wife, people complain about the electronic medical record. They complain of this, that, and the other. But man, when I walk into an exam room and I close that door behind me and I have create a relationship with a family and able to reassure them or guide them or give them advice or take care of their child, it's magic, right? If we trust each other and we form that relationship and you can ask questions and I can respond and vice versa, that's where, as you would say, the magic happens, right?
Mhm.
It's not in the billing, it's not in the portal, it's not in those kind of things. It's really getting back to those fundamentals, like blocking and tackling, right? It's relationships, it's trust. That's really what drives or should drive healthcare, not just access, convenience, do whatever, order more tests, do more stuff. It's really how do you do as much as needed, but not too much, right?
Yeah, well said. And I think folks like us who are looking at the business and the system delivery, we're going to be heavy thinking about IT because we know our technical solutions are going to help leverage and help us utilize resources and provide access and maybe even increase quality and things along the way. Well, really appreciate you being with us today. It was a treat to have you in the studio. Look forward to you coming back and doing some video courses in the future with us around emergency medicine, things that we want parents to know. Appreciate you being on our Business Advisor Council. Appreciate you being a great colleague and trusted friend and with us on this journey, and appreciate your support with Parent MD.
Yeah, Josh, I really appreciate it. I'm happy to help support anybody who's trying to get kids better care, and that's your passion. So happy to help you any way I can.
Appreciate you being here. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Josh.